Alright guys, I know this looks like a mess, but this is actually a really clean setup for a sterile filtration of previously filtered cider from one tank to another. So basically what we're doing today is we're taking some filtered cider that we have actually sent through our diatomaceous earth filter as well as a 1 micron filter previously. We did that about 2 weeks ago. Now we are going to sterile filter it into a tank in order to infuse it with an infusion ingredient that has a little bit of sugar left in solution. So that's actually our holiday spiced cider here at Slow Cider, which has maple, date, nutmeg, and cinnamon in it. So stick with me. I'll walk you through how this is all set up, and we'll start this sterile filtration together. Check it out. All right, I'm here on the walkthrough for this sterile filtration of cider that has been previously filtered. So our filtered cider is currently in this 20-barrel tank here, tank number 9. We should have about 13 barrels in there at the moment. I do believe that that's the volume inside this tank. We've measured it a couple times just to make sure. So this is where we're going to draw from, that long elbow at the bottom of this big 20-barrel tank. And it's going to go through this tube here. It's a 1.5-inch tube with triclovers on the end. And then it's going to go into this T. That T is on the inlet to our flexible impeller pump. The flexible impeller pump's right there. And of course we have that little control module off to the left, the yellow one. It's a mobile control module for the speed of the pump. Then that product, after going into the T, into the inlet of the pump head, coming out on the left side, which is the silicone tubing. It's a high pressure braided silicone tubing so that we can sanitize it, sterilize it, and make sure that it is good to go for a sterile filtration. Comes out of the pump into the first filter on our 30-inch cartridge filter setting. The first filter on the 30-inch cartridge is a 1 micron filter, and we'll show you a little bit of that as we're going. And then the second filter that it hits is a 0.45 micron filter. This is a new filter. I usually like to go with new filters when we're running a product that has residual sugar in it. I want to make sure that we remove all of the yeast from solution. We do treat all of our ciders with a little bit of potassium metabisulfate, and that'll help us knock out some of the bacteria as well. So through the 0.45, we will knock out the yeast, and then the sulfites will assist us in knocking out the bacteria content. Once it goes through the 0.45 micron filter, it comes out of this little T here. You see that it's being redirected into the tank. Okay, we're sending it in through the racking arm. I usually like doing that. It's a little bit higher than that bottom port, gives us a less differential pressure as we pump into the tank. We could always attach it to our highest most point here on this tank. This is pretty much the only higher point that we have is this valve here. This is a Franken tank. This guy, obviously you can tell all the bracing that we had to do on there. We had to do some extra welding of some unique pads in order to get this thing installed and engineered properly. But we actually saved quite a few $1,000s on it. This was a $2,000 tank, and we spent about $5 on it. And it's about 18 barrels total inside that tank. We can also carbonate and package out of it. So that's pretty much the setup here. Once again, we have product coming out of tank number 9, going into the pump head, coming out of the pump head on the silicone, going into the 1 micron filter, going through that, then to the 0.45 micron filter here, and then into the tank. And then we'll have sterile filtered product in the tank that we can then infuse with our infusion ingredients for the holiday spiced. Again, that's maple, date, nutmeg, and cinnamon, which does have a decent amount of sugar in it. It will raise the residual content to about just 1.5 bricks of sugar in solution at the end of this infusion. At the very end of this whole filtration, once we're down to the end of the product coming out of tank number 9, we're going to transition our tea here to pull from this little kegel. This little kegel here has been sterilized and it will end up having a little bit of cider, that is the line waste that we pull out of a lot of our tubing at the end of transfers and all that kind of stuff. We'll throw that into the kegel, draw that through in order to push through some of the product that came out of tank number 9. And then after we're finished drawing through that cider that came out of the tubing, our line waste, we will throw in 10 gallons of UV filtered water. That UV filtered water will chase all of our product through this entire system to make sure that we flush all of the good cider out of our cartridge filters and into the tank, so we don't lose any of that good cider that we're spending all this time sterile filtering. So go ahead and stick with me on this one. I will show you how we go about running this sterile filtration. And I hope you guys are learning a little bit. Check it out. Thank you. Getting ready to start our sterile filtration from tank number 9 to tank 1. That's our small tank here that we're hooked up to, that is on the outlet side of these cartridge filters. I'm just going to walk you through from the back end of the process so that we can start this filtration. First thing I want to do is make sure that we have this tank open. There should be a little bit of CO2 pressure inside of this tank. And make sure to purge out all of the oxygen with CO2. I'm going to leave this cracked a little bit. That is our CIP arm at the very top of the tank. Okay, so now once we start pumping into the tank, we're going to start seeing air come out of that port there. We're going to start feeling it come out. All right, now let's step over here. We're going to make sure that our outlet valve is in the correct orientation, and it should be here. This is a T valve, and I believe that if you end up having this full port T in this position, then it just goes straight through as a T. If you have it in this position, then the product will come out and go this direction. So again, that's there. If you have it pointed towards the unit, which we can't even do, that's an all open. And then if you point it this direction here, the product will come out and go that direction, which is following that silicone tubing going into the tank. Great, so our outlet to the filter is correct. We're ready to go on that. In terms of starting the filtration, we want to make sure that our topmost port to each one of these cartridge filters is just slightly cracked. We want to make it to where product can easily fill this entire 30-inch cartridge all the way to the top. And once we start seeing a little bit of product coming out, we're going to tighten this back down. And then every once in a while, throughout the filtration process, we're going to crack it a little bit just to make sure that these cartridge filter chambers stay full of product and the product is evenly filtering through the cartridge as we filter. So we want to make sure that one's cracked just a little bit. We're going to tighten that back up once it's full. We also want to make sure that our first pre-filter, our 1 micron, is good to go, which it is. That's closed. That is open. Great. So our 1 micron is slightly open. Our final filter, our 0.45, is slightly open. Those are good. And then down here at the very bottom of these cartridge chambers, there are the dump valves. I already tightened these up earlier. So always make sure to tighten those up, close them up, because at the end of your sterilization process, you end up needing to drain these chambers. So we do that through the bottom, but then just make sure to close them back up. I've done that a few times, left them open, and we've lost a little bit of product. Not a whole lot, but it's always a point of failure and a point of loss, so just be careful there. Making sure that our inlet to the cartridge filters is open. So we got that little valve there. That guy's nice and open. Beautiful. We're going to follow that all the way back to the pump. The pump, no valve on the outlet side, but definitely valves on the inlet side. Okay. We're going to be drawing from that tube, and this one's going to stay closed for now. That tube right here is going to be open at the very end of filtration. That's going to draw through that extra bit of cider from bucket, as well as the UV water. But right now we're going to start off on that line, follow it all the way back to tank number 9, and we can see that we have a valve down there at the bottom that is closed. Great. So now we've checked all of our outlet side and we've checked our inlet side, so we know we're good to go on the outlet. Now we have the inlet side that we're going to pay attention to. We know that we have the correct valve open at the moment. Great, we're going to follow that all the way back to the tank. This tank, we're going to go ahead and open up our valve here. Please excuse this bracing, it's crazy. Go ahead and open that. Beautiful, we're open. Now we also want to replace the volume inside of this tank that gets drawn out with carbon dioxide. So I'm going to go ahead and open our CO2 line that is on the CIP arm to the tank. So this goes all the way up to the top. We're just going to give that about 5 psi, and that will fill the volume of the tank as we draw the product out. We don't want to create a vacuum in there. So I'm going to go ahead and set my CO2 just about 5 psi. All right, so now we have that CO2 set. The CO2 on the CIP arm is good to go. And we have product down here on the inlet side. Now all we got to do is start this filtration process. So go ahead and stick with me. We'll start it together. All right, so we're just about ready to start this sterile filtration process. We have walked through our entire outlet side of the cartridge filters. That is, the racking arm on the tank is open. Our T valve is oriented in the right direction. We have both the little dump valves at the bottom closed. Up at the top of the cartridge filters, we have both of these redirect valves that's at the top open just slightly so that we can make sure the chambers are full. We have our inlet to the cartridge filter open. We're going to follow that all the way back around to the pump. We have our product inlet side to the T open. We have a little bit of product down there right now. The valve for product at the tank is open. And then we have CO2 charging that tank to replace the volume of product that we remove from it. Seems like we're ready to go. So I'm going to go over here to my flexible impeller pump and turn this on. So for this particular pump here, we have a directional change. Whatever direction this is pointing to is the direction that we are drawing from. So we're pointing this to the right, and we are drawing from the right. And that's, of course, if we're staring at the controller to the pump. Okay, so that's going to the right. We're drawing from the right. Beautiful, that's correct. Great, so now once we know that everything else is taken care of, we're pointing the right direction to draw from. We're going to increase this just slightly. I'm going to set this down for the moment being. Right there. We turned on our pump, and we're drawing from this ever so slightly. It's going into our 1 micron filter. We see some product coming out of there now, so I'm going to go ahead and close that up, because that says we're full. And now I just saw our 0.445. This is a sterile filter. That one is now full, so I'm going to close that one up. And then we're going to go all the way down here to the bottom, and we're going to see this product flowing out into the tank. Beautiful, that's all sterile filtered product going into the tank. Okay, so now we're back here at this T. I'm getting a little bit of leakage here. These ball valves are not always great in terms of their seal, so I'm going to put a cap on that real quick. I'm going to make sure I spray that with a little bit of star sand and peracetic acid. I'll start with peracetic acid, then I'll finish with star sand, and then I will cap that off in order to make sure that we're not losing cider through that port. So once again, here we are. Both cartridge filters are full. I'm going to check this out real quick. Make sure that we have a full housing. Looks like we do. Maybe a little bit of foam buildup up there. good to go. Okay, come over here to our one. Open that up. Yep, we're full. Close that back up. Pressures wise, we're looking pretty good. It's not too bad on the 1 micron. And then we're seeing just about nothing on, I'm sorry, that is our 0.45 micron. And this is our 1 micron. So of course the 1 micron, we shouldn't see too much on throughout the filtration, but on the 0.45, we will likely see this pressure increase over time. If it does get too high, we're going to have to stop this filtration, back flush the system, forward flush it for sterilization, and then start again. That's always something that's kind of a bummer to have to do, but in this particular situation, it's 100% necessary. We want to have this product filtered as clean as possible so that we have just much less likely chance of infection later or re-fermentation in the package. That's kind of the thing that we're trying to stay away from, is the re-fermentation in the package. These cans and kegs of cider will be sitting around for about 2 to 3 months. It's usually about how long it takes us to sell through about 10 barrels of a particular style. So we want to make sure it doesn't re-ferment in that time and turn into a champagne, because then we might have to recall it and repackage the entire product line. So once again, we're drawing from tank number 9 through this T. We're going kind of slow right now. I'd rather go slow and not increase the pressure too quickly, because then we might clog up the 0.45 prematurely, which is something we really don't want to do. So once again, we're looking at this pressure here. Looks like it's sitting somewhere around 7 psi. I believe if you see that little tick down there at the bottom, that's 5 psi. And then the one just above where our needle is the 10 psi. So I'm assuming we're sitting somewhere around 7, moving up on 8. We're going to watch this pressure, check it out every few minutes or so. We really want to make sure that this 0.45 cartridge does not get clogged. It's a very expensive filter. It's about $350 each. And if we can save it, if we can regenerate it, it's a little bit of sodium hydroxide solution, citric acid to neutralize, then we'll do that. It's better to save, a couple $100 by spending a few hours running a regeneration on this. So, stick with me throughout this process. I will get back to you guys with how this goes towards the end of filtration, when we're starting to draw out of the little kegel here. That kegel, once again, will have some of our line waste from previous filtration processes, some of the product that comes out of the filter at the end that we couldn't send through the filter. All of that goes into a bucket, and we use that to chase our next batch of cider. Stick with me, guys. Hope you guys are enjoying.